Let me tell you something. A lie will never outlive the truth. For years, the narcissist builds a false self, a mask, an illusion, a house made of glass, a perfect image they wear to the world. But deep down, they are empty, hollow, afraid. The narcissist's entire identity is built on a fragile illusion. From the outside, they may seem confident, charismatic, even untouchable. They walk into a room and their presence demands attention. They speak and people listen. But this persona, the one they carefully construct, is not who they truly are. It is a mask, a carefully engineered facade designed to shield a deeply insecure and fragile inner self. This false self is created out of necessity, not authenticity. It begins in childhood, when a person learns that love is conditional, when they realize they must be special, admired, or perfect to be accepted. Maybe they had parents who only valued them for their achievements. Maybe they were overlooked unless they performed. Over time, they build a persona, one that ensures they receive the validation they crave. This persona becomes a survival mechanism, a tool they wield to control how others see them. But here's the truth. False self is not sustainable. See, the true self is where real confidence, strength, and resilience live. But the narcissist buries it deep. They don't want to acknowledge weakness, vulnerability, or failure. They reject self-reflection because looking inward means facing the reality they fear most, that they are not perfect, not special, not above others. Instead of embracing their true self, they create an illusion, a version of themselves they think the world will love. And for a while, this works. They build relationships based on admiration, not connection. They pursue careers not for passion, but for status and recognition. They measure their worth by how much attention they receive, how much power they hold over others, and how flawless they appear to the world. But here's the problem with a false self. It needs constant maintenance. It demands endless validation. And the moment it's threatened, the narcissist panics. That's why they can't handle criticism. That's why they lash out when someone sees through their act. That's why they manipulate, control, and gaslight, because they must protect the illusion at all costs. The false self is not just a mask. It's their entire identity. And the idea of losing it, it's terrifying. But life has a way of revealing the truth. No matter how perfectly they craft their image, cracks start to show. They may fool people for a time, but no one can maintain an illusion forever. The weight of deception grows heavier. The need for validation becomes an addiction that can never be fully satisfied. And when the world stops clapping, when the admiration fades, when the truth of their actions catches up with them, that's when the mask begins to slip. And let me tell you something, when the false self crumbles, it doesn't just break, it shatters. Because there was never any real foundation to begin with. The house they built was never made of stone, it was made of glass. And when reality finally hits, when they are forced to face themselves without the applause, without the admiration, without the control, they experience a collapse like no other. But here's where the real lesson comes in. The false self may self-destruct, but the true self, it can rise from the ashes if they choose to face it. See, there's an opportunity in destruction. There's a chance to rebuild something real, but only if they are willing to do the hardest thing of all, face themselves honestly. Most won't. Most will cling to the illusion even as it burns around them. They will blame others. They will spiral into anger, bitterness, and resentment. They will try to rebuild the same false self over and over again, only to watch it crumble again and again. But for those who are willing to step into truth, for those who are willing to face their flaws, to acknowledge their pain, to stop running from who they really are, there is hope, there is freedom. Because the truth is this, real power is not found in the mask. Real power is found in authenticity. And when you embrace your true self, you don't need validation, you don't need admiration, you don't need control. You stand firm, unshaken, because you are finally whole. That is the lesson, that is the truth. And for those who refuse to learn it, the destruction is inevitable. Choose wisely. A narcissist's world is like a house of cards, built high, designed to impress, yet inherently unstable. Every piece is carefully placed, each card representing an element of their grand illusion: charm, success, admiration, power. From a distance, it looks strong, almost untouchable. But the foundation, it's weak. It's not built on truth. It's built on control, deception, and external validation. And when even one card is shaken, the entire structure is at risk of collapse. A narcissist operates in a constant state of damage control, always ensuring that their carefully crafted world remains intact. They manipulate conversations to shape their image, selectively reveal information to maintain dominance, and use people as tools to prop up their ego. Their relationships are not built on genuine connection, but on utility, how others can serve them, affirm them, or elevate their status. To a narcissist, people are either loyal supporters or threats. There is no in between. But here's the problem with a house of cards. It cannot withstand real pressure. Life is unpredictable. At some point, reality will introduce challenges that the narcissist cannot control. Failures, exposure, rejection, consequences. And when the world stops mirroring the image they want to project, when people begin to see through the illusion, their entire sense of self is thrown into chaos. At first, they fight harder to maintain the act. They double down on manipulation, blame shifting, and gaslighting. If a relationship is falling apart, it's never their fault. It's their partner's betrayal. If they're failing at work, it's because their colleagues are jealous or incompetent. If they are caught in a lie, they insist that everyone else is lying. The idea that they might be responsible for their downfall is unbearable. This desperation leads to self-sabotage. The very tactics they use to protect their image, control, manipulation, deceit, end up becoming the very things that destroy them. They push people away, burn bridges, and alienate those who once supported them. They become erratic, unpredictable, reckless. They make impulsive decisions in a desperate attempt to regain control, but instead they accelerate their downfall. And when that house of cards finally collapses, it happens fast. The relationships they built on admiration crumble because admiration is not the same as trust. The success they chased vanishes because they never built it on true skill and resilience. The power they held slips away because control is not the same as respect. This is the moment of reckoning. Some will try to rebuild the same illusion, gathering new supporters, crafting a new mask, convincing themselves that this time they will maintain the perfect image, but the cycle will repeat because a lie, no matter how beautifully constructed, cannot outlive the truth. For those who refuse to change, their world becomes smaller and smaller. Their need for admiration grows, but their audience shrinks. The people who once stood by them walk away. Their carefully built empire falls into ruins, and in the silence of that collapse, they are left with the one thing they spent their entire lives avoiding: themselves. Because no matter how high you build a house of cards, it only takes one gust of truth to bring it all down. When the narcissist reaches a breaking point, it is not a slow unraveling. It is a rapid descent into self-destruction. They have spent years, sometimes decades, maintaining an image of perfection, control, and superiority. They have carefully constructed a version of themselves that the world is supposed to admire, fear, or envy. But this image is not built on truth. It is built on a fragile illusion. And when that illusion is threatened, the narcissist does not respond with self-reflection or humility. They respond with rage, denial, and chaos. The breaking point often comes when reality delivers a blow that cannot be ignored. Perhaps they are exposed in a lie, rejected by someone they sought to control, or face failure in their career or social status. It can be a public humiliation, the loss of an important relationship, or simply the realization that they are no longer in control. Whatever the trigger, one thing is certain: they are forced to confront a truth they have spent their entire lives avoiding. At first, they fight against it. They refuse to accept responsibility. They lash out at the people around them, shifting blame and creating new narratives to explain why they are the victim, not the cause of their downfall. They might become more manipulative, more aggressive, or more desperate for attention and validation, anything to avoid facing the fact that their false self is crumbling. But the more they resist, the faster they fall. As their carefully crafted world begins to collapse, their behavior becomes more erratic. They burn bridges without hesitation, cutting off people who challenge them or refusing to acknowledge the damage they have caused. They double down on their arrogance, convinced that they are being unfairly attacked, that they are misunderstood, that the world is conspiring against them. But deep down, beneath the rage and defiance, there is fear, because for the first time, they are staring into the emptiness they have been running from all along. This is the moment when self-destruction accelerates. Some spiral into self-sabotaging behaviors, reckless decisions, addiction, self-isolation, or public outbursts. Others retreat into a cycle of delusions, attempting to reconstruct their image by any means necessary, even if it means fabricating new lies or betraying the few people who still stand by them. The narcissist cannot stand to be seen as weak, flawed, or unworthy, so they go to extreme lengths to regain control, even if it means destroying themselves in the process. But the tragedy is this: the more they try to save their false self, the further they fall from their true self. The breaking point is an opportunity, a chance to change, to grow, to finally face the reality they have spent years denying. But for most narcissists, this is a path they will never take. Instead of choosing self-awareness, they choose self-destruction. Instead of choosing truth, they choose delusion. And instead of choosing to rebuild something real, they choose to chase the ghost of the person they pretended to be. But the truth is relentless. It does not wait for permission, and it does not care about illusions. Eventually, every mask falls, every lie is exposed, and every false kingdom collapses. And when that moment comes, the narcissist stands alone, not as the powerful, admired figure they tried to be, but as the empty, broken person they always feared they were. When a narcissist world begins to crumble, the consequences are inevitable. The very things they spent their life trying to control, relationships, careers, reputations, begin to slip through their fingers. The truth, no matter how long it has been avoided, always emerges. It doesn't matter how well they've manipulated, how many people they've deceived, or how much effort they've put into maintaining the illusion. Reality is relentless, and when it finally catches up, the fall is catastrophic. At first, they refuse to believe it. They lash out, desperate to regain control. They try to manipulate the people around them, spinning new stories, playing the victim, or shifting the blame. If they lose a job, it's because their boss was jealous of their success. If their relationships fall apart, it's because others were disloyal or ungrateful. If their reputation is tarnished, it's because people have turned against them unfairly. Never in their mind are they responsible for their own downfall. But the people around them, they see the truth. The charm that once captivated them no longer works. The lies that once went unquestioned now seem obvious. The manipulation that once kept everyone under control begins to fail, and one by one people walk away. The supporters who once propped them up disappear. The admiration they once thrived on vanishes. The power they once held slips away piece by piece. This is where the narcissist begins to unravel. As their world collapses, they react in one of two ways. Some go into full self-destruction mode, engaging in reckless behavior, making impulsive decisions, or sabotaging what little they have left. Others retreat into delusion, doubling down on their false narrative, desperately trying to rebuild the illusion they once had. But both paths lead to the same place: isolation, failure, and a deep sense of emptiness. The most devastating consequence of all is that they end up alone, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The people who once admired them now see them for who they truly are. The relationships they once controlled are now broken beyond repair. The career they built on deception crumbles under the weight of reality. And in the silence that follows, they are left with only themselves. For the first time, there is no one left to impress, no one left to control, no one left to blame. They are forced to sit with the truth they have spent a lifetime avoiding, that the power, the admiration, the illusion of perfection, it was never real, it was always a mask. And without it, they feel exposed, vulnerable, and completely lost. Some will try to rebuild their false self, searching for new people to manipulate, new illusions to create, new ways to regain control. But the cycle will repeat, and each time they fall, it will be worse than the last, because once people see through the mask, they never forget the truth. But for the few who are willing to face it, the collapse of their false self is not the end. It is a chance for something new. It is an opportunity to finally let go of the illusion and start building something real. Few take this path. Most remain trapped in their own destruction, forever running from the truth. Because at the end of the day, truth always wins. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard they fight it, the consequences of deception, of manipulation, of control, they are unavoidable. And when the fall finally comes, it is not the world that destroys them, it is themselves. When a narcissist reaches the point of complete self-destruction, they are left standing in the wreckage of their own making. The power they once had is gone. The people who once surrounded them have disappeared. The respect they once demanded has turned into pity, resentment, or indifference. The world moves on without them, and for the first time they are faced with a reality they have spent their entire lives trying to avoid. They are not special, they are not above others, and they are not immune to the consequences of their actions. At this moment, they stand at a crossroads. The false self they spent a lifetime protecting has shattered. The lies, the manipulation, the control, it has all failed. Everything they built was a house of cards, and now it has collapsed. What remains is a choice: rebuild the same broken illusion, or finally face the truth. For most, the choice is clear. They cannot live without the mask. They cannot function without the validation, the admiration, the control over others. The thought of facing their own flaws, their own insecurities, their own unhealed wounds, it is unbearable. So they do what they have always done. They look for a new stage to perform on. They seek out new people to manipulate, new ways to regain power, new distractions to keep them from ever having to look in the mirror. But the cycle never ends. Each time they try to rebuild the illusion, it crumbles faster than before. Each time they try to manipulate new people, the cracks show sooner. Each time they attempt to regain control, they find themselves weaker, more desperate, and more isolated, because the truth is out. The people who once believed in them now see them for who they really are. Their reputation is tainted, their influence is diminished, and with every failed attempt to reconstruct their false self, their inner emptiness grows deeper. But for the rare few, there is another option. A harder, more painful option. An option that requires true courage, true strength, and true humility. The option to finally let go of the false self and begin the journey toward authenticity. This path is not easy. It demands that they acknowledge the truth about who they are, not who they pretended to be. It forces them to confront their past, their trauma, their insecurities, and the damage they have caused. It requires them to take responsibility for their actions, not shift the blame onto others. It means accepting their flaws, their imperfections, and their weaknesses instead of hiding behind arrogance and superiority. For those who take this path, there is hope, there is redemption, there is a chance to finally experience real connection, real growth, and real self-worth. Because the truth is, the narcissist was never truly powerful. Their power was an illusion dependent on deception and external validation. Real power comes from authenticity. Real strength comes from vulnerability. Real confidence comes from self-awareness. But very few take this path because it means tearing down everything they have ever known. It means no longer running from themselves. It means accepting that they are not perfect, not superior, not above others. It means learning how to be human, not a performer, not a manipulator, not an illusion. And for those who refuse to take this path, the cycle continues. The destruction repeats. The fall happens again and again, each time more devastating than the last, until one day they are left with nothing but the cold, inescapable truth. They destroyed themselves and they have no one else to blame. The death of the false self is inevitable. But what happens next? That is a choice between repeating the cycle of destruction or finally stepping into truth. One path leads to emptiness, loneliness, and endless suffering. The other leads to something real, but the question remains, will they choose it? The fall of the narcissist is not caused by the world turning against them. It is caused by their own refusal to face reality. The false self they built, the mask they wore, the illusions they maintained. It all comes crashing down under the weight of truth. They burn bridges, sabotage relationships, and destroy their own future, all in a desperate attempt to cling to an identity that was never real. But in the end, there is no escaping the truth. The false self cannot survive forever. It will break, it will collapse, and when it does, they will be left standing alone in the wreckage of their own making. Some will continue to chase the illusion, repeating the cycle of self-destruction until there is nothing left. Others, though few, will finally see the truth for what it is and begin the painful journey of rebuilding themselves in honesty, humility, and authenticity. The death of the false self is inevitable. What comes after is a choice to either remain trapped in deception and destruction, or to rise, to grow, and to finally embrace the reality they have spent a lifetime running from. Because in the end, the truth always wins.